Hello, my fellow Croms! It's Cromwellathon, and we are starting the second book in Hilary Mantel's Thomas Cromwell trilogy, soon to be released, complete trilogy. We finished Wolf Hall last month, and this month we're going on to Hilary Mantel's Bring Up the Bodies with my untied copy of the book. Untied because I've untied it from the the TV tie-in. Thank you, Book Wanting, for that word. Um, so we did Wolf Hall. Henry got his divorce from Catherine. Cromwell had his big clash with Thomas More and wrote the oath that More refused to take, and we have the fall of More and the death of More in the last book. Henry is married to Anne, and Anne is hopefully going to produce an heir, a male heir. That is the big key, as I think it said in this book. All of the men's schemings, plans, labors. It's like all depending on the labor of all depending on the body of a woman, which that's you got to think from a female author. It's like, yeah, buddies, it's all this comes from everybody. We all come from the female body, and it's interesting how we end up treating women in our world, in our world, and in Henry's tutor's world. So this week we're doing the first two chapters of part one. It's Falcons and Crows. The Falcons being named after dead women, the dead women in the lives of these men, specifically Thomas Cromwell's Falcons. We get to see his I believe it's his daughters, Anne and Grace. Yes, dead women as birds. That will come up later. Actually, it'll come up right now, because I am going to take a page from Jason over at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, who indeed is the great patron of the Cromwellathon. I will actually put a link down below to all his many videos where he is hosting this in the months of January and February. But I'm going to take a page from him, and I'm just going to read a little section from Crows, which, for context, Cromwell has been sent to go see Catherine, either the Princess Dowager or the Queen that was. Catherine, by Henry and Anne, who, especially Anne, is very paranoid that Catherine must be, plotting against them, because that's what she would do. She would, of course, plot against them. And she's feeling very tense at the moment because, that heir has not happened yet. And she's definitely paranoid. And Henry has got his own displacements going on. We've Wolf Hall signifying Jane Seymour, and Cromwell having spotted that, yes, this is maybe better maybe push Jane towards him as well, just so that I've got all my things in the thing. So he's on the road. He stops at an inn and he sleeps with the innkeeper's wife. The innkeeper's wife, who comes up and basically says, shall I stay? And she does. And at the end of this, as they're leaving, he's like, I need to go to a church. And like, the guys are like, oh, because you need to confess, eh? It's like, I need to get a blessing. And so he goes to the church. He doesn't give the priest his name. This is a church that's actually right in Kimbleton, I think is the name of the town, which is right up against where where Catherine is. And he doesn't give his name. He does leave an offering. And he questions the priest more than the priest him. There's no confession on his side. It's more the priest doing the confessing. Definitely, you can see the power differential. And at the very end, he does say, "Oh, well, you remember Tom Woolsey in your prayers this Sunday?" And the priest is kind of like shocked, because who would be giving the disgraced cardinal's name as somebody who should get things? But so. He comes out of the church. When they leave the church, the last light is vanishing into the sky, and a stray snowflake drifts along towards the south. They remount. It has been a long day. His clothes feel heavy on his back. He doesn't believe the dead need our prayers, nor can they use them. But anyone who knows the Bible as he does knows that our God is a capricious God, and there is no harm in hedging your bets. When the woodcock flew up in its flash of reddish brown, his heart had knocked hard. As they rode, he was aware of it, each beat a heavy wing beat, as the bird found the concealment of trees, its tracing of feathers inked out to black. So that was one of these little quiet sections that I love about Mantel. Um, of just kind of getting you physically into this space of kind of like the snow coming out of a church and there being snow, and and his musings, the things of like, he doesn't believe that, like, he doesn't believe that the dead need our prayers, because he's very much part of the movement, the Reformation, which is a kind of, we're going to dismantle all this kind of prayer economy that the church has been using to comfort people, because it's a really hard life, but also to to kind of suck up the money. But also there's that thing of like anybody who knows the Bible, because he's also a Bible man, and he's got to know, it's like that's what that is a part of him. Like, an earlier generation wouldn't be about the Bible. It would be about like, well, what does the priest tell me about the saints and all that sort of stuff. But he's very much about that. And there's no harm in hedging your bets, which there's hedging your bets about like, giving offerings to the church. There's also no hedging your bets in a political sense of, I'm going to back Jane Seymour at the same time as I'm being a loyal subject to Henry and Anne, because I can see that the shifting things, and we're all depending on Anne's body here. But if Anne's body doesn't deliver, I need to jump to the next horse, to the next flutter. In that. And then there's that last bit with the woodcock, which I have to say, slow as I am, I guess, I was like, why is there a bird in here? Why does it make his heart pound so? And then I think about, the beginning of the book where we're talking about the falcons, and the falcons being the dead women, and he has just come from sleeping with with a woman, and I can't help but thinking of like, oh God, that's his wife suddenly flying up into the thing, or a reminder that way. And it's interesting, just kind of like the repetitions in this of the heaviness. He's got his clothes heavy on his back, and then we've got the heavy wing beats at the end. He is a guy who is weighed down by he's weighed down by his memories of the people that he's lost, of the things that he has done, the things that he is potentially going to do, in a very kind of ruthless fashion. So I just love, Mantel is really good at doing kind of all that compression in just kind of like little quiet scenes of just emphasizing stuff. Probably going on from that about the Bible, because I think this is a book that's really obsessed about the words, and it's a subject that's like, the written word is a big thing in here. I mean, Cromwell's big thing is he's trying to edge Henry towards the idea of having a printed English Bible in every church in the land. That's his goal, which is a dangerous goal from the point of view of the Catholic Church, and of a devout guy like Henry. He's going to have to kind of slowly push him towards that. But he's got this idea above all, he wants like one language that's everyone's own. So there's that idea of which is what happens really with a King James Bible. You start getting this unification of the English language. This is going to solidify the English language and make it a common language. Cromwell talks about in this book that you can go 50 miles from London and you start saying like, I like a herring, and they'll just look at you blankly, and you have to kind of basically kind of act out and kind of, this is the shape of it. For people to finally go, oh yeah, that's what that means. It's like there's that. It's a country that is divided in all its little dialects, in all its little half meanings, and a part of what Cromwell is going for, it's religious. It's the it's bringing the Gospels, the truth to all people, and not being cloaked in mystery and and an authority of a foreign power. But it's also the idea of us having a common language, which is a huge thing. I mean, that is something that influences our culture today. Though at the same time, there's that kind of push and pull, because while we want one language, there's also the idea in this, like in the last book, I talked about Moore having his dictionary and other people having their, and Cromwell having his dictionary. It's like there's still the kind of, we're talking at cross purposes, that super difficulty of actually communicating with language. But also, I guess maybe it's one of those things of, there's the ambiguity of language, the beautiful ambiguity of language that makes novels possible, and makes them such rich places to get various readings and misreadings of them, which I love. And there's a thing at the end there of where he's really pressing Catherine. I almost called her Queen. Cromwell would be disappointed in me. Of pressing Catherine about, like, he wants her to submit, and at the end she's like, what language do you confess in, Cromwell, or do you confess at all? And he replies, God knows our hearts, madam. There is no need for an idle formula or for an intermediary. And then to himself, I guess, no need for language either, he thinks. God is beyond translation, which is it's interesting coming from a fellow who's kind of, a part of his big thing is translating the Bible, but there's also just kind of the impossibility of translating the Bible, but there's also the impossibility, you have to think, in a kind of a sense of distilling whatever the spiritual is. I'm an atheist, but of impossibility of capturing that in words. They talk about the impossibility of translating it from one language to another. And I mean, the difficulties and what you lose and maybe what you gain. I mean, Cromwell, in some ways, there's a national project going on here when you're translating the Bible into English, becoming, in the end, in a kind of a big literary historical context for England, the King James Bible, in many, in his daughters, his King James's reign, past the next one past his daughter, Henry's daughter. But just so there's that thing of just not being able to capture in words, which I guess that's also it's a very literary thing, we're gonna dwell on. That's a great thing for an author to dwell on. It's like, it's impossible to actually capture it in words, but I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna allude, and you're just gonna be so impressed by how much I can conjure in your brain. And also, I think the other thing in there of the whole thing of confession, like Cromwell says, I don't need confession, which I think kind of gets to kind of a bit of a tone of the books so far, of like, it doesn't feel like, it's not Cromwell confessing. This is Cromwell to himself. This isn't Cromwell confessing to a priest. That's not the energy you get. This is Cromwell to himself, pondering, thinking, but he's not confessing. He's not confessing to us, the reader, and he's not making apologies in a lot of ways. He's making his own self-justifications, and he's seeing things from his point of view, but it's not a confessional, which I think is interesting, because, Cromwell's not a confessional sort of guy. All right, so that's me chin wagging and rambling and on for a good hunk there for Bring Up the Bodies. Definitely, I did not look up what the next hunk is, but I will leave links down below to Jason's. I think his announcement video has kind of his schedule of what's the next, and I'll probably put a link to his discussion of the first part of Bring Up the Bodies, which I'm sure will be very interesting, and I look forward to listening to that, and to all the other folks who are participating in this and making videos and leaving comments. It's really good stuff. All right, more videos later.